What is going on, Colts Nation? And welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back with another one, guys. Well, guys, we are kind of in this weird point in the summer where there's not a whole lot going on, but we wanted to bring back for, I think, the fifth or sixth consecutive year now, our look and our deep dive into each and every position group on the Indianapolis Colts ahead of the 2025 season coming up here really quickly. So we wanted to kind of dive in, look at each player in the room, and talk about them to some degree. So we're going to jump in today and start with the most important position in sports and probably, Derek, the most talked about position on the Indianapolis Colts, the quarterback position, because there's a lot of question marks on the future of that position for this team. There's a lot of people who aren't sure how to feel about this position group this year. And it's going to be quite interesting because the way that we view this position group compared to even last year is totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different in a lot of ways. So there's so much to talk about, I feel like, with this quarterback position that we can dive into. But I think before we kind of dive into some of the players that we're going to obviously talk about a lot, let's start with a couple guys that are on the roster already that probably won't be competing for a starting spot, but likely will be competing for that QB3 position. Of course, you still have Jason Bean on your roster. He's been kind of that quarterback 4 recently, but has a chance here to compete for quarterback 3. And then, of course, you have Riley Leonard, who you drafted this year in the 6th round. So talk to me about, man, just some of these quarterbacks that the Colts have that are likely going to be competing for a roster spot or maybe are just going to be more the practice squad emergency quarterback situations here that the Colts currently have on their roster.
Yeah, I know that there is a small section of the Indianapolis Colts fan base that is team Jason Bean at this point.
Oh, yeah.
It's just always hilarious. You know, there's always that small section of a fan base that always thinks that the third quarterback is better than, you know, the other two quarterbacks when you're having quarterback controversies. They always do. But yeah, obviously Jason Bean not really going to be competing for a spot as far as, you know, making the team, though. That's a question, but I doubt that he gets over Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard is a quarterback much like Sam Ehlinger was that, you know, the Colts really enjoy having because, you know, he's a smart player. He's a very understanding player. He's a very coachable player. Limited skill set in how he throws the football and how he can read the defense, which is ultimately why he's a QB3. But, you know, he is a guy that, you know, can be utilized really well for, you know, being able to be a scout team quarterback, you know, a guy that can use his legs, a guy that, you know, can run RPOs, do play action, you know, can throw the football a little bit deep. So, you know, it'll be good for defensive practice. But overall, yeah, I think Riley Leonard gets that QB3 spot. But unless we're just botching the season, I don't see Riley Leonard getting a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, ideally, no. Ideally, it's a situation where it's either the other two quarterbacks we're going to talk about, Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, and you don't see Riley Leonard. But again, Derek, you never truly know because, you know, we said that a couple of years ago in 2022, and all of a sudden you got guys like Nick Foles and, you know, obviously Sam Ehlinger playing for you and starting for you. And so hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but
Right.
you never know with how the season can go out. So those guys need to always be available and ready. I mean, Riley Leonard certainly wasn't great last year for Notre Dame, but it's kind of funny. Him and Anthony Richardson are similar in the ways where I know Richardson's obviously a lot more athletic, but they both can run the football and they both are super inconsistent throwing the football. So like similar-ish skill sets, which is interesting, but yeah, I think him and Jason Bean will have to compete, but obviously Riley Leonard is a guy they drafted recently and feel really high about, and it seems like that's the type of quarterback they like on their roster as kind of that third quarterback. But, you know, I can see them both kind of being more of those practice squad guys. I could see Jason Bean still being on the practice squad in some capacity because, again, he's kind of an interesting prospect in the fact that he can play quarterback. He's listed on the roster as quarterback / wide receiver, which is so fascinating. So this dude's definitely got athleticism. But we saw him really do some really good things in the preseason last year, and I think that's probably why there's so many people that are Jason Bean believers, because you saw him play really good football. Now, again, it's against backups, so it's like, okay, how much of that do you really take on? But I do think it's going to be a fun competition to watch there between him and Riley Leonard, and who it ends up being that next guy up, if you will. Say something happens to one of the two guys that are going to be competing, like is there an opportunity for one of them to back up one of these quarterbacks? So I'll be really fascinated in that. But both guys definitely have their perks and drawbacks. We'll have to see how that goes. So, okay, let's continue on, and let's talk about the thing that everybody's been talking about, Derek. This has been the debate for so long when it comes to the quarterback position and just in general, just the controversy surrounding it, right? With Anthony Richardson obviously coming back for a third year, and then the Colts bringing in real competition in Daniel Jones. And funny enough, and it's kind of unfortunate for Colts fans, but one of the two worst quarterbacks a year ago, but both coming in with a lot to prove. I mean, both guys that this might be one of their last chances to seriously compete for a starting quarterback position, right? Like, it's getting to that point where certainly for Daniel Jones, that's the case. Anthony Richardson might have a little bit more leeway, but for the Colts, absolutely, this is his last chance to prove he can be the guy moving forward. So both these guys have a lot of things that are going against them. I mean, both these guys have not played great football the last couple of years. And for Anthony Richardson, he has the injury factor on top of it. And, obviously he missed all minicamp with, that injury shoulder flare-up thing that happened, a little bit of soreness there. But seems like he's going to be healthy for the start of training camp. So both these quarterbacks are going to have an opportunity to come in and compete here, Derek, in training camp and preseason to see who is the starter out there in week one. So, man, talk to me about both these quarterbacks and just what we're going to obviously be watching at quarterback. That's going to be probably the biggest position battle in camp we're going to be watching. But, man, talk to me about both these quarterbacks and just the pressure they're facing and what both of them need to prove this year.
Yeah, you're right. In comparison to what it was last year, last off season, there was an optimism around Anthony Richardson, I would say. There were definitely people that were like, there's still no way he's ever going to be it. But, even you and I were just like, there's optimism because we saw some flashes of some good things his rookie year before he went down with injury. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, once he gets his shoulder back and, he has that whole off season to start, getting those mental reps and, we'll see him continue to get better throughout the year. And then, after a couple games into the year, and we started realizing this isn't working. And obviously the whole benching thing happened, and then people literally lost their minds. And so now, there's a lot of uncertainty with Anthony Richardson, even the diehards that are out there, and who you are, that are like, man, I don't know how much confidence I actually do have in Anthony Richardson. And then, you bring in Daniel Jones in the offseason, and, again, Daniel Jones, who didn't really do a lot in New York. I mean, I know their team made it to the playoffs, but Daniel Jones was not the big reason behind why that team, went to the playoffs. And I mean, you certainly hope that if Daniel Jones were the quarterback this year, he has a better core unit around him this time than what he had in New York. But I mean, who knows? You're right. There's uncertainty now. Before there was uncertainty, but there was optimism. Right now, there is no optimism with this group. I think a lot of people's minds are like, we're screwed no matter which way we go about it, unless Anthony Richardson, actually is like somewhat decent this year and, doesn't turn the ball over so much and, can get a few touchdowns per game and, lead this team better, then we're kind of in a standstill where, again, just doesn't matter what the rest of the team does. The offense is not going to really factor in much if Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones just isn't good. So, there's uncertainty until we see some actual reason to be optimistic.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think, there's a lot of people that their faith in these quarterbacks is starting to wane. Their faith in Anthony Richardson is starting to wane. And I can't say I blame them. I think I'm kind of to that point, Derek, right now where, I mean, the obvious move for what fans want is you want your former top 4 pick. You want him to win the job and you want him to figure it out. But reality is that you need the best quarterback out there to win. Like, you need the best quarterback out there to give you the best chance to win. And whoever that is, I'm kind of to the point, Derek, I don't know where you're at this point, but I'm kind of to the point, I'm like, whoever the best quarterback is at this point, let them go out there. Let them be the guy moving forward. And, I know some people are like, oh man, but like, I don't want to be sitting there at 9-10 wins again. But I'm like, man, like, give these guys at least a chance. You can't run out there and say we want to win, with your backs against the wall if you're Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, and then give the less deserving quarterback the spot. Like, you can't do that. You have these guys are professionals. They want to win. They haven't won in a while. You need to give whoever the best quarterback is the chance to play. But it's going to be so fascinating because both these quarterbacks, Derek, they're very similar in the fact that, they also are very athletic. They both obviously can run the football, but they also both have kind of struggled consistency-wise as well. Now, you could argue that, Daniel Jones, like you said, he's had a worse supporting cast around him. I mean, really, he had, Saquon Barkley for a couple of years. But other than that, what really did Daniel Jones have? And you look at this Colts team offensively, and they've got a lot of weapons. So you're like, okay, I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to be a top 10 quarterback, but could Daniel Jones in this situation where he has 3-4 receivers that you really like, he has a tight end like Tyler Ward, he has an offensive line like the Colts have, and he has Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, like, could that make him elevate his game more similar to what he was in 2022 than what he was last season? That's kind of the biggest question mark when it comes to Daniel Jones. Or is he just bad and he just move forward and say both our quarterbacks aren't very good and we're going to look for a new quarterback next year? Now, of course, you're probably not going to be around if you're Shane Steichen or Chris Ballard for that, but that's kind of the interesting situation where, we talked about it in another episode about, some of the wild card positions. That's why we put this position group in that wild card position, because we just truly don't know how it's going to go. I feel like it could go so many different directions where both quarterbacks could be awesome. Both quarterbacks could be terrible. Both quarterbacks could be mediocre. I don't know what the answer is going to be there, but both these guys have the talent to do it, but talent alone can't get you to where you need to be. You need something else in order to get you to where you need to be. And if you can have either quarterback even be average this year, that's going to be a major step up from what you had a year ago. So we'll just have to see how this does play out. But hopefully one of these quarterbacks figures it out and can be that starter this season and maybe get the Colts back to the playoffs for the first time since 2020. So, guys, let us know your thoughts here on the quarterback position, probably the most controversial one when talking about the different position groups on this team right now. And who do you think is going to win the starting quarterback position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below and drop your comment with who you want to see starting week 1 for the Indianapolis Colts. But guys, that'll do it for this one. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff, so you're in the loop when actually more content comes out. And, inevitably we start actually getting back into some content training camp wise and stuff like that. So that'll do it for this one though, guys. Thank you so much. And as always, guys, go Colts.